Okay, so let's dive into something really, really fundamental today. If you're
Yeah.
building a business or even just thinking about it, especially in tech,
Uh-huh.
how do companies actually, grow? How do they scale up
Yeah.
and find that sweet spot?
Where the product just clicks with the customer need. Yeah. Product market fit.
Exactly. And we've pulled together this great stack of sources you sent over articles, case studies, research, all sorts.
Mm-hmm. And they really hit you with the opportunity and the difficulty right away.
Yeah, like that stat. SaaS companies grew what, 32% on average in 2023?
Huge growth. But then,
But then, the flip side, over half of them face at least one major growth challenge.
right, so it's not automatic. A
Yeah.
potential is massive.
Mm.
But actually navigating that growth, that's the tricky part.
So our mission here, really digging into this material you shared, is to cut through some of that complexity.
Yeah, pull out the key insight.
On scaling, on innovation, product market fit, give you that shortcut to understanding these crucial ideas.
We'll break down what makes a business, truly scalable.
Look at some really cool examples of companies reinventing themselves.
And that framework for understanding if you've really connected with your market is fascinating.
Definitely. And we have to talk about the pitfalls too, right? The traps businesses fall into when they try to grow too fast.
Absolutely. Crucial to cover those.
Okay, so where do we even begin? SaaS comes up constantly in these sources. What exactly is it? Why is it sort of the poster child here?
Well, software as a service, SaaS, it's basically software delivered over the internet, subscription model, usually.
So not buying a CD anymore.
Exactly. No discs, no big one-time license fee typically. You access it through your browser, maybe an app.
Like Google Workspace, Salesforce.
Dropbox, Office 365.
Yeah.
All those are classic examples. You're paying for access, for usage, not really owning the software itself.
Okay. And the sources seem to suggest this model inherently lends itself to scaling.
It does, yeah. It has some built-in advantages. Because it's centralized, rolling it out to new users is super fast compared to old-school software installs.
Easier logistics.
Much easier. And it often looks more cost-effective up front for the customer. Plus, the provider handles updates, security, all that messy stuff happens in the background.
So adding one more customer isn't this huge operational lift.
Pretty much. It's largely just provisioning access, turning on a switch, which, sounds like a recipe for easy growth.
But like we said, that 50% facing challenges,
Yeah.
it's clearly not just about the tech model itself.
No, definitely not. There's way more to it. And one source makes a really interesting point about the kind of growth that matters most. It's not just about new customers, is it?
Right. The customer retention piece. Companies focusing their grow, what was it, 30% faster?
Yeah, 30%. That really pushes back on the idea that growth is only about constant acquisition, keeping the customers you already have. That's like a supercharger for scaling.
That feels critical. Growth isn't just getting bigger numbers. It's about getting sticky, building a model where people stay.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of a scalable business model really comes into play. How do the sources define that?
Well, they talk about revenue growing much faster than costs.
Right. You can handle that rapid, sustained growth without your expenses exploding proportionally, without needing huge changes to your structure every time you add users. It's about efficiency at scale.
Okay, so it's less about the raw number of customers and more about the leverage you have, the efficiency in serving each additional one.
Precisely. Think about the contrast they draw with non-scalable businesses,
Like the personal trainer example, or a hairdresser.
or someone making handmade crafts. Their revenue is directly tied to their time or the physical things they can produce. More clients, more hours, more crafts, more materials and labor. Costs scale almost one-to-one with revenue. There's no real leverage there.
Whereas Netflix or a typical SaaS company,
Ah.
adding another user doesn't require a proportional jump in their core costs.
Exactly. The marginal cost of letting one more person stream Netflix is tiny compared to the subscription fee they pay. The big costs, the tech platform, the content deals, the software development, those are largely fixed or grow much, much slower than the user base. That's scalability.
Got it. And the sources break down the necessary ingredients to build that kind of scalable model. What are those key elements?
Okay, so first, your product or service has to be deliverable widely, repeatedly, without crazy high costs each time.
Makes sense.
You need a really clear target market. Understanding them deeply lets you acquire customers efficiently, keeping those acquisition costs down.
And a solid revenue model. They mentioned subscriptions, freemium.
Right, things that bring in predictable, recurring income and often scale easily as usage grows. Freemium is an interesting one they highlight.
Yeah, how does giving stuff away for free help you scale revenue? Seems counterintuitive.
Well, it dramatically lowers the barrier to entry. You can get a huge number of users onto your platform very quickly, very cheaply.
Your main cost is just serving them, the infrastructure.
Exactly. Then you focus on converting a smaller percentage of those free users, the ones who need more features, more storage, whatever, into paying customers.
Ah, so you scale the user base like crazy with free and then efficiently scale the revenue from your most engaged users.
Precisely. It builds customer acquisition right into the product. And the final piece, of course, is you need the actual resources, the tech, the team, the
This
processes.
is stuff that can actually handle the growth without falling over.
Yeah, absolutely essential. Scalability is potential, but you need the capacity to actually absorb it.
Okay, landscape defined, scalability understood. Now, how do companies actually do it? Your sources get into specific strategies and even like changing the whole business model.
Right. The MailChimp source lays out some practical tactics. The most obvious, just getting more customers.
Though, as we said, got to be careful with things like deep discounts that might hurt long term.
True. Then there's expanding your product line,
Mm.
adding premium features, different tiers.
Hmm.
That feels very natural for SaaS.
Yeah, you leverage the customers you already have, the tech you've already built, offer more value, maybe charge more.
Or attract slightly different customer segments. Another big one. Entering new markets.
And those examples are cool. Tesla using its battery tech for home energy, not just cars.
Or Avon. Starting with books, then applying their direct selling model to cosmetics.
Shows that new markets isn't just about geography, right? It can be applying your core strength or your model somewhere else entirely.
Definitely. Diversifying revenue streams is another. Adding subscriptions, if you didn't have them, maybe online courses, a physical store going online.
And franchising, for some types of businesses, lets you scale by basically copying your successful model through partners.
All solid growth strategies. But sometimes getting to the next level of scale or finding growth when things stall requires something deeper.
Which is where business model innovation comes in. BMI.
Exactly. BMI. It sounds complex, but it's really about modifying or even totally reinventing how your company creates value, delivers it, and captures profit.
So not just a new feature, but changing the fundamental logic.
That's a good way to put it. The Bosch perspective mentioned in the sources suggests real BMI happens when you change at least two core parts: who your customer is, how you make value, how you deliver it, or how you make money.
Okay, that helps frame it. What are some striking examples of BMI from the sources?
Well, platform models are a big one. Airbnb connecting hosts and guests without owning rooms.
Right, they create value through the connection, take a cut.
Or think about gaming free-to-play, pay-to-win, like Candy Crush or Fortnite, or freemium models like Tinder. They totally innovated how they make money from user engagement.
Different ways to capture value.
Exactly. Rental models, too.
Yeah.
Hilti or Caterpillar leasing tools or heavy equipment than just selling them. Shifts the whole revenue stream.
From one-off sales to recurring income.
Precisely. Budget airlines. Ryanair, Southwest. They stripped down the traditional airline model, changed the value proposition, changed the cost structure.
Even McDonald's self-service kiosks are mentioned as changing the delivery of value.
Yeah, boosting efficiency, maybe even sales lift. It shows BMI isn't just for tech startups.
No, absolutely. And the Atonic source gives specific strategies for BMI, like substituting, excluding, porting. Can you unpack those quickly?
Sure. Substituting is basically swapping one part of the model for another.
Yeah.
Think Adobe moving from selling software licenses to selling subscriptions.
Or Hilti swapping tool sales for leases?
Right. Changing the core transaction. Excluding is removing something. IKEA takes out the assembly costs for the customer. Ryanair takes out checked bags and meals to hit that low price point.
You strategically don't do something others do.
Exactly. And porting is taking a successful model from one industry and dropping it into another. Starbucks applying the fast food service model to coffee.
Or Netflix applying the DVD rental subscription model to streaming.
Perfect examples. These strategies give you a mental toolkit for how you might actually innovate your own business model to scale or find new opportunities.
Which is powerful. But all this talk about scaling, innovating, it's kind of pointless if you haven't nailed the most fundamental thing first, right?
Absolutely. Product market fit. PMF. One source calls it the central quest for any growing business.
The central quest. That definitely lands the importance. And that UCSD ARC source, it has this really insightful framework for PMF. It's not just if people use your product.
It's how they feel about the problem your product solves. It's all about the customer's relationship to the problem. And they identify three main archetypes based on that. First one, hair on fire.
Okay, hair on fire. Sounds urgent, painful.
It is. These customers have a problem that's super clear, super urgent. They are actively looking for a solution, like right now.
So the market's probably crowded?
Usually, yeah, because the problem is obvious. So your challenge isn't convincing people they have the problem. It's standing out from all the noise, all the other solutions, screaming, me too.
So you can't just be slightly better. You need to.
Different. That's the key insight. You need a genuinely differentiated approach, often focusing on the customer experience. And you need to move fast. Aggression and velocity are key because the demand is hot now.
And the examples they used. Wiz doing cloud security without agents, which was different. Rippling with that unified HR database.
Yeah, they found a distinct angle to solve that urgent hair on fire problem. Okay, second archetype, hard fact.
Hard fact, like something people just accept. It is what it is.
Exactly. The customer sees the problem, but they see it as unavoidable, just part of life or part of doing business. The market might be stagnant or full of clunky workarounds because nobody really believes it can be solved properly.
So the challenge is inertia, habit.
Totally. Overcoming that it's always been this way mentality, your solution needs to create an epiphany.
Make them realize the hard fact isn't a fact anymore.
Precisely. You need a truly novel approach that changes their whole perspective.
Yeah.
Think Block when it was Square giving small businesses those mobile card readers. Suddenly, cash only wasn't a hard fact.
Or HubSpot popularizing inbound marketing, showing businesses there was another way besides expensive outbound ads.
Right. They revealed a solvable problem where people just saw constraint. Okay, third archetype, future vision.
This sounds like the really ambitious one.
It is often the toughest starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Here, customers might be totally oblivious to the problem you see,
Mm-hmm.
or they just don't believe your solution is possible.
Right.
The market for what you're building, it doesn't really exist yet.
So the big challenge is just disbelief.
Yeah.
Educating the market.
Disbelief, yeah.
Yeah.
And because the end goal might be so far off, the source stresses needing pit stops.
Pit stops, like interim goals.
Sort of. Interim products or services that can find product market fit with some group of customers now. These pit stops bring in revenue, validate parts of your tech, keep the lights on while you pursue the grand vision.
Ah, okay. Like NVIDIA using gaming GPUs as a pit stop.
Exactly. While they were working towards this bigger vision of GPUs for general computing, or OpenAI using ChatGPT massively successful pit stop on the road to their artificial general intelligence goal.
That makes a ton of sense. You find these smaller PMF wins to fuel the marathon journey to the really big paradigm-shifting one.
Yeah, it acknowledges that changing the world takes time, and you need ways to survive and learn along the way. And crucially, the sources emphasize, PMF isn't static. You don't just achieve it and you're done.
Companies move between these types.
Absolutely. Think about Apple. Early days, the personal computer, arguably future vision. Later, the iMac tackling complex PCs, maybe hard fact, the iPhone launching, future vision again. Then the smartphone market becomes hair on fire pretty fast.
Right. So a company, even different products within it, can be on different PMF journeys at the same time. It's an ongoing quest.
It really is.
And how does this connect back to scaling? There was that mention in the Furious Squad source about focusing on vertical markets, like specific industries.
Yeah, that's a really good connection. Focusing on a vertical could be a super effective way to find PMF, especially when you're starting out.
Because you can get really deep into their specific problems.
Exactly. You understand their unique needs, their hard facts, their hair-on-fire issues much better than a generalist could. This lets you tailor your product, your messaging, everything very precisely.
Making it easier to become that best-in-class or novel approach for them.
Right. You increase your odds of hitting PMF strongly within that niche. Then, scaling within that vertical, or using that success as a beachhead to jump to related verticals, becomes much more manageable. Focus to win, then expand.
Okay, so we've covered scalable models, innovating them, finding your fit. Before we wrap, let's touch on validation. How do you know you're on the right track before pouring in resources? And how do you avoid those scaling pitfalls?
Validation is, well, it's non-negotiable according to the Visology source. You have to check if there's a real market need, and crucially, if people will actually pay before you go all in.
And they list steps, figure out your assumptions, check market size, search volume, but the real key seems to be talking to actual potential customers.
Oh, absolutely. Customer interviews are gold. You need to hear their problems in their words, understand their pain points. Then you test. Prototypes, free samples, discounts, surveys. Get your actual product or service in front of them. even in a rough form.
See how they react in the real world?
And then this is critical, actually use that feedback. Iterate, don't just collect it.
It sounds like skipping validation is maybe the biggest pitfall of all, building something nobody actually wants.
It's definitely a classic startup killer. But okay, let's say you validate, you find PMF, you start growing. Scaling itself brings a whole new set of dangers. The sources flag some key ones.
Cash flow mismanagement is a big one. Growth costs money up front, right?
It really does. You spend before you earn sometimes. The solution offered is simple but hard. Rigorous, regular cash flow forecasting. You need to know where every dollar is going and when you'll need more.
Hiring too quickly is another one. Seems odd when you're trying to grow, but
But it's a real risk. You can hire faster than you can effectively onboard, train, and manage people. Quality drops, culture suffers, cash burns faster. The advice is to phase hires based on realistic projections, not just hype.
makes sense. And overlooking customer experience, easy to do when you're chasing new logos.
So easy. You get tunnel vision on acquisition and forget the customers who got you there. You absolutely need systems for tracking satisfaction and acting on feedback, even when you're growing fast.
Then there's failing to optimize processes. What worked for 10 customers breaks at 1,000.
Exactly. Manual tasks become huge bottlenecks. You have to invest in automation, streamline workflows as you scale, and finally, never underestimate the competition.
Especially as you get bigger and become a target yourself.
Right. Competitor analysis isn't just a startup thing, it's an ongoing necessity.
And MailChimp added that crucial point. Don't forget your people, your culture, your employees.
Absolutely. They're the engine driving the growth. Scaling puts immense strain on the team. If you neglect them, ignore the culture, you risk burnout, losing key talent, which ultimately kills growth anyway.
Wow, okay. We've covered a ton of ground here. From, the nuts and bolts of scalable models, how companies innovate, and that whole nuanced journey of finding product market fit.
And the practical side, validating ideas, avoiding those classic scaling mistakes.
It really highlights how interconnected it all is. Success isn't just one thing. It's not just the idea or just growth hacking.
No, it's building that solid, scalable foundation. It's being strategic about how you evolve. It's deeply, deeply understanding your customer and the problem you solve for them. And it's being prepared for the inevitable bumps in the road as you grow.
So here's something for you listening to think about. Reflecting on your own idea, your own business, the market you're in. Which of those product market fit archetypes feels most like your current quest? Are you fighting in a hair-on-fire market, trying to change a hard fact, or building towards a future vision?